During dinner, my son looked straight at me and asked the one question that would destroy our family in a single breath. Why do not you live in the house I bought for you? For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. The words floated in the air between us, heavy and misplaced, like a line spoken in the wrong play. I smiled out of reflex, the kind of smile you give when someone makes a joke that does not quite land. What house? I asked. The silence that followed was not normal silence. It was sharp, alert, the kind that makes your skin tighten. My son did not laugh. He did not correct himself. He frowned slightly, confused, then glanced toward his sister sitting across from me. The table was small, too small for 3 adults, and the weight of everything we had not said in years. Steam rose from the pasta I had been stirring for hours. The sauce, thick and rich, simmered the way I always did when I wanted things to feel familiar. Safe. My daughter's fork slipped from her fingers and hit the plate with a sharp clatter. I felt my heart sink before my mind caught up. She went pale. Not nervous pale, not embarrassed pale. She went the color people turn when they realize a secret has just died. Dad, my son said slowly. You know, the place near the hills. I sent the money last year. You said you liked that area. I stared at him, then at her. I had never said that. I had never seen that money. I had never heard about any house. My daughter pushed her chair back so fast, it scraped loudly against the floor. She stood, knocking her glass over. Red wine spilled across the tablecloth, like a spreading stain no one could ignore. I need to go, she said. Sit down, I said, my voice calm but brittle. What is he talking about? She did not answer. She grabbed her bag, her hands shaking, and moved toward the door. My son called her name, sharp now, confused, turning into something else. She did not look back. The door slammed. The sound echoed longer than it should have. For several seconds, neither my son nor I spoke. The sauce bubbled over. I reached out automatically and turned off the heat, my hands moving from habit while my thoughts lagged behind. Dad, my son said quietly. I sent her the money. She said she would handle everything. She said you did not want the paperwork stress. How much money? I asked. He hesitated. Enough to buy you a home outright. The room tilted slightly. I reached for the edge of the table to steady myself. My daughter had always been the reliable one. The one who checked in. The one who remembered birthdays, appointments, the brand of tea I liked. She called every Sunday. She framed herself as the bridge between me and my son when his success carried him far away. And now she had run. I bent down to pick up the napkin she had dropped. As I did, something slid out of her bag and onto the floor. Keys. Not apartment keys. Not car keys. A thick, heavy ring with a brass tag attached. My son leaned forward. His face had changed. The easy confidence he carried into my kitchen was gone, replaced by a tightness around the eyes I recognized from his childhood when something felt deeply wrong. I picked up the keys. The tag had an address engraved into it, a place I had never been. My son stood abruptly, knocking his chair over. He took the keys from my hand. His jaw clenched. She bought it in her name, did not she? He said. I did not answer because the truth was already forming, sharp and undeniable. On the floor near her abandoned chair lay a folded document. I opened it with trembling fingers. Official seals, typed lines. Her signature clear and deliberate at the bottom. Buyer name, hers. Purchase date, last year. Purchase amount. A number that made my chest tighten. I taught her how to write her name. I remembered guiding her hand when she was 7. The loops uneven. The letters too big for the lines. I remembered telling her that signatures mattered because they meant you stood behind what you did. My son sank back into his chair slowly. She did not just lie to me, he said. She stole from you. The word stole landed harder than any accusation I had imagined. Because it was true. Not just money. She stole trust. She stole certainty. She stole the story I thought I knew about my own family. I looked at the untouched plates, the carefully prepared meal growing cold between us. All evening, I had believed this was a simple dinner, a rare moment of togetherness. I was wrong. It was the beginning of something else entirely. We did not talk much on the drive. My son drove, his hands locked around the steering wheel, as if letting go might cause something worse than silence. I stared out the window, watching familiar streets blur into unfamiliar ones. Modest buildings giving way to manicured hedges and wide gates. I had lived my entire adult life in small spaces, apartments with thin walls and uneven floors, places that required care, not wealth. Wherever we were going did not belong to me. The address from the key tag led us to a quiet road lined with tall trees and homes set far back from the street. Each house looked like it had been designed to be admired from a distance, not lived in. We pulled over in front of one that stood slightly higher than the rest. White stone facade, long driveway, iron gate, half open, as if it had never been closed properly. "This is it," my son said. I did not respond. I stepped out of the car slowly, my legs stiff, my chest tight. The house was enormous, multiple floors, wide windows, balconies that caught the light in a way my rented apartment never had. It was the kind of place people imagined when they talked about success, and apparently, it was mine. Except it was not. The front door was locked, but the gate was not. We walked up the drive together, our footsteps echoing too loudly in the quiet. My son pressed the doorbell. Nothing happened. No chime, no movement inside. He tried again. Still nothing. I pressed my face closer to the window, cupping my hands to block the glare. The room beyond was empty. No furniture, no curtains, no signs of life. Just bare floors and dust catching the light. "This makes no sense," my son said. We walked around the house. Every window told the same story. Empty rooms, unused space. A house that had been purchased but never claimed. An older woman appeared from the neighboring yard, a small dog tugging impatiently at its leash. She watched us with open curiosity, the kind that comes from living somewhere long enough to notice everything. "Are you looking at that place again?" she asked. "Again," my son said. She nodded. "That house has been sitting like that for a long time. A year at least." A year? I felt the words settle into my bones. "Did anyone ever live here?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. Never saw anyone move in. The couple came once, maybe twice. The woman looked nervous. The man talked a lot. After that, nothing. Just the realtor stopping by now and then." My son thanked her. She walked away, her dog yapping behind her, unaware it had just barked at the remains of my family. We stood there in front of the house that should have changed my life. It had not even opened its door. Back in the car, my son exhaled sharply. "She bought it," he said. "But she never planned for you to live here." "No," I said. "She never planned for me to know." The realization was slow and devastating. This was not a mistake, not a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate act. She had taken the money, purchased the house in her name, and left it untouched, like a secret she hoped would never breathe. My mind replayed the past year with cruel clarity. Her constant check-ins, her insistence that I was better off where I was, her gentle deflections whenever I mentioned moving or downsizing or change. She had built a lie so carefully I had thanked her for it. We drove back in silence. At my apartment, the air felt smaller than ever. The walls pressed in. The couch, where I had sat every evening, seemed suddenly fragile. My son spread the documents across the table again, reading them as if a different order might change their meaning. The house was paid in full. No mortgage, no trust, no provision for me. Just her name, clean and clear. "Dad," he said finally, "she planned this." I nodded. She did not steal in panic. She stole with precision. The worst part was not the money. It was the time. A full year of dinners, calls, reassurances. A year in which she watched me live modestly, while a house sat empty, waiting for a future that was never meant for me. I sat down heavily. "I raised her," I said. "I taught her right from wrong. I taught her that if you take something, You take responsibility for it." My son looked at me, anger burning behind his restraint. "What do you want to do?" I did not answer immediately. Outside, the light faded. Inside, the truth settled. That house did not just exist. It waited, and so did the consequences. The next morning, I woke before the sun. Sleep had been shallow and fractured, filled with half-dreams where doors would not open and rooms stretched endlessly without walls. I sat at the edge of my bed, listening to the quiet hum of the building, wondering how something so carefully hidden could unravel in one careless sentence over dinner. My son arrived just after 8, coffee in hand, jaw set with determination. He had already made calls. He always moved fast when he decided something needed fixing. "There is a legal way to handle this," he said. "We do not have to guess." We went upstairs to see an old neighbor of mine, a man who made his living untangling other people's mistakes. His apartment smelled faintly of paper and stale tea. Books lined the walls, heavy with rules and exceptions. He listened without interrupting, flipping through the documents, nodding occasionally. When we finished, he leaned back and folded his hands. "This is not as simple as it feels," he said. My son frowned. "She took money that was meant for our father." "Yes, but the transfer was voluntary," the neighbor replied calmly. "No contract, no written trust. Courts care about paperwork, not intention." I felt something harden in my chest. "So she just gets away with it?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not exactly. You could sue. It would take years. It would be expensive. And it would put every family conversation under a microscope. Judges do not like family disputes dressed up as fraud." My son clenched his jaw. "We would win." "Maybe," the man said. "Maybe not. And even if you do, ask yourself what winning looks like." Silence filled the room again. Outside, someone laughed. Life continuing without regard for our crisis. On the walk back down the stairs, my son stopped and turned to me. "We cannot let this go," he said. "If we do nothing, she learns that betrayal has no cost." I knew he was right, but I also knew that dragging my daughter through court would turn something broken into something irreparable. Papers would not just expose her actions, they would expose all of us. Back in my apartment, I stood by the window and watched people pass on the sidewalk. I had spent my life building things that were not meant to last. Temporary structures, illusions meant to be taken down after the applause faded. Yet this lie had been standing for a year. I thought of my daughter as a child, sitting on the floor coloring while I worked late into the night. She used to look up at me and ask if I was proud of her. "Always," I would say. That word felt dangerous now. My son paced behind me. "What are you thinking?" I turned to him slowly. "I am thinking that courts punish actions," I said. "But they do not teach people to feel what they have done." He looked at me carefully. I did not like the edge in his eyes. "Dad, I have spent decades understanding how people react to fear." I continued. "What guilt sounds like. What it looks like when someone cannot escape their own choices." He crossed his arms. "That sounds like revenge." "No," I said. "It sounds like accountability." He did not argue, but he did not agree either. That afternoon, my daughter finally texted, "Dad, please talk to me. You do not understand? I can explain everything." I read the message 3 times. Then, I set the phone down without replying. For the first time in her life, she did not get an immediate answer from me. That night, I opened an old storage trunk I had not touched in years. Dust rose into the air, catching the lamplight. Inside were tools from another life. Wires, small speakers, motion sensors, equipment designed to convince audiences of things that were not real. My son stood in the doorway watching. "What are you doing?" he asked. I lifted one of the devices, turning it in my hands. "I am not going to take her to court," I said. "Then what?" I looked at him. "I am going to make her live inside the truth she tried to bury." He said nothing, but he did not stop me, and that was how I knew the line had already been crossed. I did not rush. That surprised even me. For days, I moved through my routine as if nothing had changed. Morning coffee, short walks, the quiet rituals of a man who had lived alone long enough to master the art of appearing calm. Inside, something colder and sharper was taking shape. If I was going to do this, I would do it properly. I called an old friend I had not spoken to in years. We had worked together once, long ago, back when I still believed stories could fix people if you told them well enough. She answered on the third ring, her voice instantly recognizable, older but still alert. "You do not call unless you are building something dangerous," she said. I smiled despite myself. "I need help with a project. Something small, something precise." She listened. She did not interrupt. When I finished, there was a pause on the line. "You want the house to remember her," she said finally. "Exactly." We met 2 days later at my apartment. She looked around at the narrow space, the thrift store furniture, the shelves lined with old notebooks and faded photographs. "She bought you a palace and left you here," she said softly. "She bought herself silence," I replied. "I am going to give her noise." We laid everything out on the table. Not chaos. Not cruelty. Control. Motion sensors placed where footsteps could not be avoided. Speakers small enough to disappear into walls. Light sources angled to create shadows that moved when no one else did. Nothing that could hurt anyone. Nothing illegal enough to draw attention. Just enough to unsettle. Just enough to wake guilt. The house was perfect for it. Empty rooms amplify sound. Bare walls reflect light in unforgiving ways. A place designed for luxury becomes hostile when stripped of warmth. The hardest part was the voice. I recorded it alone, late at night, sitting in my bathroom where the acoustics were clean. I did not raise my volume. I did not shout. I spoke the way I used to speak to her when she was young and afraid. "Why did you take what was not yours? You knew this was meant for me. You could have asked." Hearing my own words played back made my chest tighten. It sounded older, tired, hurt, perfect. The night we went in, the street was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes every movement feel louder than it is. We parked far enough away to avoid attention and walked the rest of the distance carrying plain bags that looked like gym gear. The house loomed ahead of us, dark and expectant. "She still has not been here," my friend whispered. "No," I said, "but she will be." We entered through a side access she remembered from a past showing. The door opened with barely a sound. Inside, the air was stale, untouched. The smell of dust and fresh paint mingled like a promise that had never been kept. We worked efficiently. Years of experience made our movements automatic. Sensors installed. Speakers hidden. Lights positioned with care. Every detail mattered. Too much, and it would feel fake. Too little, and it would fail. At one point, my footstep triggered a sensor by accident. My voice filled the empty hallway. "Why are you here now?" My friend froze. "That is unsettling even when you know it is coming," she said. "Good," I replied. "It should be." We finished before midnight. No mess, no trace. As we stepped back into the night, I turned once more to look at the house. In the dark, it looked like any other. Calm. Innocent. But now, it was waiting. Back at my apartment, I sat alone with my phone in my hand. A message from my daughter waited on the screen, sent hours earlier. "Please do not do this, Dad. I'm scared." I stared at the words for a long time. Then I turned the phone face down. Fear was not the punishment. Living with what she had done was. And the house was finally ready to tell her. They moved in on a night thick with rain. I watched through the small screen on my laptop as headlights cut across the driveway, sweeping over the stone walls of the house. The car stopped. The engine idled for a moment longer than necessary, as if hesitation could still undo what had already been decided. My daughter stepped out first. She stood there, keys in hand, staring at the door she had owned for a year and never dared to enter. Even from the camera feed, I could see the tension in her shoulders. This was not relief. This was surrender. Her husband followed, carrying bags, moving with forced confidence. He spoke to her. I could not hear what he said. But I recognized the body language. Dismissive. urgent, as if speed alone could outrun consequence. The door closed behind them. For a while, nothing happened. They moved through the house cautiously, lights flicking on room by room. Their footsteps echoed too loudly in the empty space. I waited. I did not rush the moment. Guilt needs quiet to speak clearly. The first trigger came just after midnight. My daughter walked down the main hallway alone, phone in hand, her reflection doubling in the glass panels. The sensor activated. "Why are you awake?" My voice filled the space, layered, directionless. She froze. Her breath caught so sharply I saw her hand fly to her chest. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Her husband grumbled something from another room, irritation in his posture. She stood still, listening, waiting for reassurance that did not come. The next sound was softer. "You knew this was meant for me." She backed up slowly, eyes scanning the hallway. When nothing appeared, she pressed herself against the wall, as if it might anchor her to something real. "Stop it," she said aloud, her voice trembling. "This is just stress." The nights that followed grew worse. I varied the timing. Sometimes the voice came early. Sometimes deep in the night. Sometimes it did not come at all. Uncertainty does more damage than fear. Objects moved just enough to be noticed. A photograph placed on a mantel where none had been before. An old family image I knew she carried in her bag, now sitting openly in the living room. She found it one morning and sank onto the floor, clutching it to her chest. "I never meant for you to see this," she whispered. Her husband tried to explain it away. "Old owners, coincidence, fatigue." But his voice lacked conviction. Even he could feel the house resisting them. Sleep abandoned her. Dark circles formed beneath her eyes. She stopped changing clothes. Her hands shook constantly. When the voice came now, she did not run. She answered. "I did not want to hurt you," she said one night, sitting on the floor in the hallway. "I just needed time. Time does not belong to thieves." Her sob broke something in me. She covered her face, shoulders heaving. "I am sorry," she cried. "I am so sorry." Her husband burst into the hallway then, anger flashing across his face. "Who are you talking to?" She looked up at him with hollow eyes. "My father," she said. He stared at her as if she had spoken a language he did not know. "There is no one here," she laughed then. A brittle, broken sound. "That is the worst part," she said. "I know." The house had done what I asked of it. It had stripped away excuses, left only truth. But watching her unravel was not the satisfaction I had imagined. It felt like standing too close to a fire you started yourself, realizing too late how easily it spreads. And, for the first time since the dinner that changed everything, I wondered if I had gone too far. The confrontation did not happen in the house. It happened in daylight, away from shadows and speakers and walls that listened too closely. My son called me early the next morning. His voice was tight, controlled in the way it only was when he was trying not to explode. "She wants to talk," he said. "Both of them. Not at the house. Somewhere public." I agreed before he finished the sentence. We met in a quiet park just outside the center of town. Benches still damp with morning dew. Parents pushing strollers. Joggers passing without noticing how carefully my daughter avoided my eyes when she arrived. She looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner. As if the last year had been quietly carving pieces out of her. Her husband sat beside her, hands folded, shoulders rigid. The confidence he carried at my dinner table was gone. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then my daughter took a breath so deep it seemed to hurt. "You know about the house," she said softly. "About the money." I nodded. She swallowed. "I know you think I did this for myself. For comfort. For greed." She looked up then, finally meeting my eyes. "I did it because he was dying." The words landed flat, almost ordinary. That made them worse. Her husband closed his eyes. I felt the park tilt, just slightly. "What?" my son said. "Cancer," she continued. "Diagnosed last year. Aggressive. Rare. The kind where doctors stop using hopeful language and start using numbers. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded packet of papers. Medical reports. Bills. Dates highlighted in shaky pen. They told us he had months, she said. Maybe less. There was one treatment option. Experimental. Not covered. And we had 72 hours to secure a place in the program. My son flipped through the papers, his face draining of color. How much? He asked. She did not answer. Her husband spoke instead. More than we could ever earn, he said. More than we could borrow. More than we could beg for. Silence stretched. I felt my hands curl into fists without realizing it. You could have asked, I said. My voice came out low, raw. You could have told me. She nodded. Tears slipped down her face unchecked. I know. I know that now. But then I was terrified. And he was too proud. He said asking meant admitting defeat, that he would rather die than be pitied. Her husband flinched, but did not deny it. Then your brother sent the email, she continued. She laughed weakly. It felt like a sign. Like fate giving me one terrible option instead of none. So you took it, my son said. Yes, she said. I told myself it was temporary. That I would sell the house later. Pay it back. That no one would get hurt if I fixed it fast enough. She looked at me, but time ran out. The bills kept coming. And then the house became a secret I was too afraid to touch. The park was too quiet. I looked at her husband, really looked at him. The way he held himself, stiff and careful. The faint yellow of illness beneath his skin that I had ignored before. Are you alive because of this money? I asked. He nodded once. I am in remission, he said. For now, the treatment worked. My daughter covered her mouth and broke down then. The kind of crying that empties you rather than demands comfort. I did something unforgivable to save him, she said. And I lost you anyway. I had built an entire plan around the idea of choice. That she had chosen herself over me. Now I saw the truth. She had chosen between two losses and picked the one she thought she could survive. I wanted to speak, to shout, to undo everything I had done in that house. But the words did not come. Understanding arrived instead. Heavy, unwelcome, necessary. What you did was wrong, I said finally. She nodded again. I know, but you were not greedy, I continued. You were desperate. My son stared at the ground, jaw tight, fighting his own reckoning. That does not erase the damage, I said, but it changes what comes next. Her eyes flicked up. Hope, fear, both. What happens now? She asked. I exhaled slowly. Now we decide whether this family is going to destroy itself trying to be right or survive by being honest. The wind moved through the trees. Somewhere, a child laughed. And for the first time since the night the house began to speak, I turned off the system completely. The silence that followed was real, and it was louder than anything I had ever staged. I did not sleep that night. Understanding did not bring peace. It brought weight, the kind that settles into your chest and makes every breath feel deliberate. By morning, the anger had dulled into something more dangerous. Clarity. I met my son alone at my apartment. He had barely slept either. The anger in him had not softened the way mine had. If anything, it had sharpened. She still stole from us, he said the moment he stepped inside. Sick, husband, or not. I know, I said. And she has to face consequences. Then why did you turn off the system? Because fear is not justice? I replied. And I am done being her executioner. He paced the room, stopping only when I spoke again. There are two paths forward. He looked at me. The first path is court. You win. She loses everything. The house is taken. They drown in debt. Their marriage probably does not survive it. You get your money back. But you lose your sister forever. And the second path? He asked. I sat down. The second path is restitution without annihilation. I explained the terms slowly, deliberately. She would sign the house over to him voluntarily. No drawn-out trial. No public record of scandal. No additional claims for repayment beyond the property itself. She would walk away with debt, real debt, the kind that forces change. He stared at me, as if I had suggested we burn the house down ourselves. That is mercy, he said flatly. No, I said. Mercy is forgiveness. This is accountability with limits. He ran a hand through his hair. You are letting her off easy. I shook my head. Easy would have been never being caught. Easy would have been pretending nothing happened. She will carry this for the rest of her life. So will we. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded once. If this is what you want, he said, I will agree. But I am not ready to see her. Not yet. I understood that. I met my daughter 2 days later, alone. She arrived early. Hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes red but steady. She did not speak until I did. I am not here to forgive you, I said. I am here to end this. She nodded. I laid out the terms. You transfer the house to your brother. Immediately. No delays, no conditions. In exchange, there will be no further action. No court, no additional claims. Her breath shook as she listened. And if I do not agree, she asked quietly. Then we go to court, I said, and you lose everything, publicly. She did not hesitate. I will sign, she said. I deserve worse. I did not correct her. When she finished signing, she slid the papers back across the table with trembling hands. Dad, she said, I know you may never forgive me, but please believe this. I never stopped loving you. I stood. Love does not excuse betrayal, I said. But it explains it. I walked away before she could respond. That evening, the documents were delivered. The house was no longer hers. No victory, no celebration. Just an ending that felt more like a scar than a triumph. Justice had been served, but it tasted nothing like satisfaction. The house was transferred quietly. No headlines, no court drama. Just signatures, timestamps, and the sound of something heavy being set down at last. My son took ownership and immediately stepped back. He did not move into it. He did not celebrate. He treated it like what it had become, a symbol of damage, not success. He arranged for it to be rented, handled by people who would never know the story behind the walls. My daughter moved out within days. She and her husband downsized to a small place, far from the life they had tried to steal. She took a second job. He focused on recovery. The medical reports were cautiously hopeful. Remission. For now, time bought at a terrible cost. We did not speak. Weeks passed. Then months. I returned to my routines. Morning walks, simple meals. The quiet life I had before all of this. Except now, it felt different. Thinner. Like a room after furniture has been removed, where you can still see the outlines on the floor. One afternoon, a small package arrived at my door. Inside was something I had not seen in years. An old award from my working life. Something I had once given my daughter when she was young, telling her it was a reminder to always make choices she could stand behind. Attached was a note in her handwriting. I do not deserve this back yet, but I am trying to become someone who might. I sat at the table for a long time holding that note. This story does not end with forgiveness. Not yet. Forgiveness is not a switch you flip, because understanding arrives. It is a road you decide to walk, step by step, when you are ready. I am not there. Maybe I never will be. And that has to be allowed too. What I learned is this: love does not protect people from making terrible choices. Desperation does not turn wrong into right. And justice, real justice, does not always feel good when it is done. Revenge promises relief, but it only keeps you trapped in the moment you were hurt. Mercy, when it is earned through accountability, does something quieter. It lets life continue without demanding that everyone be destroyed in the process. I did not get my family back the way it was, but I stopped losing myself trying to punish what was already broken. And that, I have learned, is sometimes the only ending a story like this can honestly offer.